to our weekly recap of the latest news from the solar PV industry compiled by the American Solar Energy Society. I'm Jay Warmke with SolarPVTraining.com, and this is what's happening in the world of solar for the week of March 10th. Now, 2023 was another record year for solar installations in the U.S., but actually wind energy saw its slowest growth in about a decade. Now, the U.S. added a little over 33 gigawatts of capacity last year. That's a 67% increase over 2022, when they added only about 20 gigawatts of new generating capacity. Solar energy last year accounted for 52% of all of the new energy added to the grid. And battery capacity really nearly doubled in 2023, adding 8 gigawatts of capacity to bring the total to about 17 gigawatts nationwide. Now, wind, as I mentioned, grew very slowly, only at about a 6% rate, which is the slowest rate of growth since 2014. Wind, solar, and storage accounted for 77% of all of the new capacity added to the grid, and renewables now account for nearly a quarter, 25%, of all of the electric generation in the U.S. Now, not all of the solar grew evenly in the various portions of the industry. Residential grew at about 12% rate, commercial solar grew at about 19%, and utility scale solar actually was the big winner, growing at about 77% year on year. A recent report from CEA, the Solar Energy Industries Association, and Wood Mackenzie really are predicting that this robust growth rate for the industry is going to continue well into the future. They're projecting that in 2024, the U.S. will add about 36 gigawatts of capacity, and that each year the amount that's going to be added to the grid is going to increase really all the way up until 2032, at which point more than 60 gigawatts of capacity will be added in that year. Now, to put that into context, the U.S. currently only has about 161 gigawatts of installed capacity. So these projections are really saying that over the next 4 years, the amount of solar in the U.S. will double, or more than double. Manufacturing, according to this report, also increased domestically, largely in part to the Inflation Reduction Act that gives a 10% bonus tax credit if you use domestically manufactured products in your installations. The capacity to make solar panels grew 8.5 gigawatts, bringing the total capacity up a little over 16 gigawatts of U.S. domestic manufacturing. In 2023, 13% of all of the residential systems installed in the U.S. and 5% of the non-residential included batteries with the solar installations. And they're projecting that in 2024, this trend is going to actually accelerate quite quickly. They're projecting about 25% of all new residential systems will incorporate batteries, and non-residential systems, that will be about 10% will incorporate batteries. Senator John Ossoff, the Democrat from Georgia, along with 10 other Democratic senators, have petitioned the Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, to incorporate basically in the domestic content rules that solar panels that qualify for this must also incorporate solar wafers that are manufactured here in the U.S. to get that 10% tax credit. The process for making a solar panel essentially takes mined silicon. It's then refined into pure ingots of silicon, and those ingots are then sliced into wafers. The wafers are made into cells, and then the cells are assembled into solar panels. Currently, the legislation says that in order to qualify as domestically made, the cells and the modules must be made here in the United States. The senators are saying, let's back that process one step further down the chain and require that the wafers also be created here in the United States in order for that to qualify for the tax credit. Currently, there's no cell or wafer manufacturing capacity here in the U.S. And in fact, China controls about 98% of all of the solar wafer capacity worldwide. And the Department of the Treasury and the IRS have further defined the rules that apply to taking advantage to some of these tax credits from the IRA. Currently, the IRA says you can deduct, you can get a tax credit of 30% off of the cost of your installation, whether it's a commercial or a residential system. For commercial systems, there are additional tax credits. You can get them for domestically manufactured components. Also, if you're an energy community, a community that's relied on fossil fuels for employment. In the past, nonprofits would not qualify because they paid no taxes, and these were tax credits. But the new IRA legislation says nonprofits and governmental bodies can get a tax refund, essentially, or a direct payment for their 30% or 40%, whatever it happens to be. And they're also saying now that businesses, for-profit businesses that do not need the tax credits, they may not be profitable or they may have enough deductions, those entities can sell their tax credits to third parties, and the proceeds from that would be treated as tax-free. And the Department of Commerce has released preliminary findings saying that the China, Indonesia, Mexico, and Turkey are subsidizing their extruded aluminum industries to the point where it's creating an unfair competitive advantage over domestic manufacturers of those materials. Now, this is the first step in imposing tariffs on these imported products from those countries. This will affect the solar industry because the rails that these panels are mounted on and the frames of solar panels are largely made from extruded aluminum. The final determination on whether tariffs will be imposed is expected to be made in July. And that's the news from the solar industry for this week. We'll see you next week.